Hey everybody, and welcome to the Growth Experience Podcast. I am your host, Chris Dye. Our hope is that by listening to this podcast, you realize that you have a gift. And by believing in your gift, you can uncover your purpose and have vision for your life. Whether you're listening in your car, at home, or watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in, and let's go! Hey everybody, welcome back to the Growth Experience Podcast, episode 33. Super pumped for today. I'm our guest today. Before we get started, I do want to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Community Land Title. Community Land Title is a full-service land title and escrow settlement provider here to protect your real estate investments. When you work with their knowledgeable team, you will be guided through the process in a transparent and timely way. Shout out to Matthew Purdom, everybody at CLT. Love you guys, appreciate you. If you watch on YouTube, you notice we're doing a little bit different setup today.
Yep.
A little more laid back, I feel like.
I like it. It's relaxed.
It's relaxed, yes sir. Absolutely, that's the word I would describe as well. And so, very, very excited for our guest today. And without further ado, I'll just go ahead and introduce you, bro.
Perfect.
One Stop Media Kentucky, Dave Carroll, our guy for today.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
I'm happy to be here, bro.
Thank you, man. When you, I think we met like one time.
100%.
And
we might have been meeting for 5 minutes.
Right.
That one time.
And I said, hey, I do this show. And I was like, I feel like I would love to have you on there. And you, like, without hesitation, was all in.
Yeah,
so
dude, absolutely.
I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
For sure. We're like instant bros.
Yep.
So it's perfect.
Absolutely. And just as we were talking about before we started rolling, this is kind of wrapping up for the year.
Yeah.
So by the time we kick this out, I believe it'll probably be the second to last episode. And so, always got to end on a good note.
I'm honored, man. I really am. I'm honored, for sure.
I'm blessed to know you, for you to be here, bro. And honestly, we'll just kind of dive right into your story. If you give us some background info on Dave.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll try to keep it somewhat brief
I'm the
here.
same way, dude. It's all good.
It's one of those things that when we talk about our lives, especially as I've gotten older, I learned that this story keeps getting longer and longer. And I used to get really upset with my mom about the length of her stories. I love you, Mom.
Yeah.
But now I'm learning that I'm the same way. So I will keep it a little bit more brief, but a little bit about me. I'm from Northern Kentucky originally, Cincinnati area. My family's still there for the most part. I'm half Puerto Rican. My dad lives in South Florida, so I love the different cultural background I have.
Yeah,
It's always been really fun to be half Latino, and I've always embraced that and enjoyed that. But kind of growing up, my parents grew up in church. Took me every time the doors were open, and I played football, and so I was heavily involved in multiple things. I got to college, played a semester of football at Union College, a really small school in Southern Kentucky. Loved playing football, hated the injuries, hated the politics.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate because I went to Union and met my wife there in a work study program. So I was able to meet her, flirt with her,
there you go.
Court her,
Yeah.
And she actually ended up graduating 6 months later from the time we met. And at that time, it was winter 2011, because we're old now.
I know.
I decided to transfer to EKU to try to play there. My best friend was the backup quarterback. I was hurt, though. I was really hurt. My body was just tore up. I didn't end up making the team. But it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. But I learned a ton through football. And I talk about sports and my upbringing a lot because it's a lot of what shaped how I've operated in corporate and as an entrepreneur, right? And so, anyway, didn't make the team. Sheena ended up moving to Richmond to live and work. And so I finished up my time at EKU, started working for a fairly large telecommunications corporation. Then that was about 2013. And I worked there for a long time.
Yeah.
I moved up the ranks. I got promoted 6 times in 7 years.
Wow.
And my daughter, who is now 7, this is her 7th house. So if that tells you how often we moved with the company, I was a company guy. I wanted to get promoted. I wanted to have my name in shining lights.
Yeah.
I thought that was what would make my family happy and support them well.
Right.
And so kind of intertwined in there is coming to know the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2014, I became a Christian.
Yeah.
And so as a young Christian, as an early Christian, I thought that the right thing was to do that. I knew I could run my race really well.
Mm-hmm.
And by, working really hard, I thought that was it. And I thought that, I was supposed to keep moving up.
Yeah.
And then as I later learned, it was a lot of pride, selfish pride mixed in there. But
right.
Anyway, so we got to Indianapolis, which was the last stop. And my job was really different and difficult. And I learned a lot. And I failed a lot. And the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of fast forwarding a little bit until June 2021, I had a panic attack, and I was driving, and I had to pull over at a gas station. I puked out my window, out my door. I called my wife and said, I gotta come home. I gotta figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening right now is not working for me.
Yeah.
And that weekend, it was a Friday, that weekend we decided that I was going to quit my job. Had nothing lined up. Felt like the Lord was going to take care of us somehow, some way, and help us get back to Kentucky.
Yeah.
And, we did. I took this little work from home job and then ended up working at a business in LaGrange for a little bit. So while I was working in a cubicle office job, I'm a daydreamer. I'm a dreamer. I can't help myself.
Yeah, that's how we're wired, man.
And I began thinking, like, what can I do that, whether it's a side hustle or eventually, I would love for it to become my main thing.
Yeah.
Like, what am I passionate about? What am I good at?
Yeah.
And so in my time in corporate America, I was really good at social media. I was really good at, creating trainings and things like that were engaging. And so that's really where I kind of started from. Mm-hmm. And our church, we had just filmed this series about how to engage the refugee community in Louisville. It was a fantastic series. I was terrible at everything I did but helping get people in the right places.
Yeah.
My camera work was awful.
Yeah,
I didn't edit any of it. All of it was bad, but I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved every second of it. I got to work alongside incredible people at our church. I got to be in places that were really beautiful and shoot with them and just learn so much. And it was spurring, and I just couldn't help get it out of my brain. And so as I'm sitting in this cubicle, I'm like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I loved doing that filming. I loved, promoting it on social media and helping our church out with social media, which I had already been doing a little bit, and podcasting. I've been podcasting for, 5 years at this point.
Yeah. And
so that's kind of how the first thoughts of One Stop Media Kentucky came around.
Yep.
And, initially I really, had this massive dream to have this amazing studio. And my wife, thank you for being the realist in our lives, which I need you so
I got
much.
one of them.
She was like, what can you do right now?
Yeah.
And so I was like, let's get a camera.
Yes, sir.
Let me just learn.
Yep.
And so that's how it started. So that's a lot of the birth of One Stop Media KY. And over the course of the last year, the Lord's been gracious to give me discipline and motivation to learn how to use that camera and to learn how to edit, and giving me clients that trusted me to do that and learn in the process. And here I am a year later, and I'm thankful that it's my full-time job
That's awesome.
to run this company and to love on my community. And I was given this title that I'm not sure that I deserved, but I loved it, but community storyteller. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
I try to tell stories for the people in our community.
Yeah.
Whether that's athletes, or it's a local business, or it's a church, or whatever it might be. I want to help you tell your story.
Yeah.
Because your story is important.
Absolutely.
And we're passionate about things, right? I'm passionate about my business, and so are you.
Yep.
Right? You're passionate about whatever it is. I want to help you relay that passion via video. So that's kind of what I do, and what I'm thankful I get to do full time now.
Yeah. Dude, I love it. I love every bit of that. And kind of what I I listened to this one podcaster and he says, I see everything in pictures. And so like for me, as we work through some things, I gotta rewind us a little bit and just chop it up. You know what I mean? So first of all, shout out to work study programs, because I did a work study program at U of L in Louisville, and I worked at the new Student Arts or Student Activity Center at the SAC in the new gym. Man, it was so much fun. So I get that, just being plugged into your community, school, relationship building, all of that stuff was super fun for me also. And so I do want to talk, the kind of main theme that I'm picking out, and really the purpose of this show being called The Growth Experience, is that we grow through experiences, right? Your story matters. Your journey matters. And there are pieces of it that we want to uncover to tell the listener, because maybe they can relate to your story, right? We've had several people. Actually, my mom and I's story was what kicked off the podcast. Right. And it just got dethroned as the #1 downloaded episode on audio podcast platforms last week. So shout out to Nathan and Justy. You guys knocked off me and my mom, which I couldn't think of a better episode. So, sweet. But yeah, man, I want to kind of just dive into the growth that happened. This is the word I keep hearing, in your transitions. Yeah. Right? So there are pain points in our transitions. And so when you had to transfer, like nothing really outside of meeting Sheena, it sounds like, is going well for you at Union. And that was a new place for you. Am I correct in that? And so, now you're transitioning from Union to EKU. Then you have to transition from EKU and college into the corporate world, into the workforce, right? And so I just kind of want to, that first transition of especially doing something that you were loving, football, not necessarily working out the way you wanted it to. Can you talk about that transition from football to now having to, you've got this girlfriend, maybe fiance, that you're courting, as you said. I like that. And just talk about that, man. Dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, wow. That's that feels like forever ago at this point. But yeah, so basically, I wasn't one of those guys that played football as a kid. I didn't play until I was in 8th grade. But I was big and I grew really fast. And so, as I'm going into college, I knew I'm not really that good at this point, but I know I can get better and I have the size. And so I'm like, man, I could really, with coaching and everything, I might be able to play long term. I might be able to make a career out of this. And so I got to Union. I was fortunate, man. I got to sit behind an incredible tackle. He was actually, the prior year, was the offensive player of the year in our conference as a tackle, which is incredible. Shout out to Quentin Borders. That's my guy. But I had the opportunity to sit behind him. Well, he got hurt about 7 games into the season. And I'm like, this is my spot. Yeah. This is lining up, right? And so basically I began, right away, like that Tuesday or whatever, I was practicing with our first team. And so then basically they moved me to another spot, which was cool. I was fine. I was happy to play. Yeah. And then 2 days later on Thursday, I was asked to not be on the first team anymore. Wow. And no one told me why. I couldn't get an answer. I was like, what is going on, And I couldn't understand. I understood that maybe I wasn't like his, up to his level, but they weren't telling me why I wasn't playing. Sure. And so I was really frustrated and finished out the season, of course, and decided I was going to transfer. Thought I was going to have a great opportunity to play, and it didn't work out. Yeah. I was hurt. I tried out still. They did this thing where they told 3 of us on a Friday. They called us, hey, we've made a decision for everybody else but y'all 3. And out of you 3, we're going to pick 1. And the thing was none of us were the same position. So it was, me and 2 other guys in 2 other positions. Well, I thought I had it on lock. I was the most polished. I had just come off of playing a season of college football. And so that whole weekend, I was primed. Yeah. Primed to be the guy. Right. Monday comes, I didn't get it. And I was broken, bad. Again, at this time, I was not a Christian. I hadn't been going to church at all, and and so football was life. Yeah, it was everything. And that day, this is one of like the defining early moments of mine and Sheena's time as boyfriend and girlfriend at this time. That day, she surprised me at my dorm room, and she had brought me like some candy or something, but just her being there for me and loving me well in that moment when I felt like my world was crashing down. And everything I knew about who I was, my identity was baked in. And not just football per se, but the team and being a part of it and being, having the camaraderie with, you were in the armed services, right? Yeah. You know what this is like. That
100%.
You go through hard times together. It builds you together. It binds you. And you don't experience that in much other aspects other than sports or, military or whatever. You just don't see that as much.
It's different.
It's way different. And so anyway, that was hard for me to navigate that. And that transition from being a football player to just a student, I was like, this is dumb. It felt pointless to me.
Yeah.
And so literally at that point for the rest of the semester, I mean, man, I didn't do much. I'll be honest. I was a terrible student. It was the first time in my life I had really ever had like freedom, I guess you could say. I wasn't bound to a team or anything like that.
Right.
And I wouldn't go to class. I wouldn't turn stuff in. And thankfully, by the grace of God, I was ahead at that time. And so it didn't put me behind per se, but it really could have. It could have been detrimental. And I'm thankful the Lord kept me through that time.
Yeah.
And allowed me to meet people and see things and learn and grow. And I'm also obviously super grateful for Sheena and her support in that time, not really even knowing me that well.
Right.
And being there for me and with me. And so, man.
No, I love that. And we do that, man. We wrap up our identity in these external things that, at the end of the day, if you really look at it, we talk in the real estate world because it can be very easy to not spend time with your family with what we do. We don't have a schedule. You don't have a schedule necessarily. Like, we can work around things to a degree, but at the end of the day, we work for somebody else. And we kind of have to work around their schedule, right? When they ask us to do stuff. And so it can be very easy to wrap up my identity in real estate or in sports or in the military. My transition from the military was very hard. I tore my ACL, I had a knee surgery, I had shoulder surgery, tore my labrum in my left shoulder, and, they basically, when they don't need you, bro. Like, next man up, right? That's what they always say in sports. And so that was very, very difficult for me. So I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that. And then also, like, Kelsey was a huge part of my life in those times, right? And I think that we kind of go back and forth on being the rock for one another as we obviously submit our lives to the Lord and what He has for us. But I think He brings people into our lives for a reason. And so I love, I didn't hear that part of the story the first time you told me. So that's pretty awesome. She's pretty cool. Yeah. I'm excited to even get to know her better
for sure
as well. So talking about identity, transitions, at what point did you say, that you kind of devoted your life to Christ, or even started, just like you said, kind of early spirituality?
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm thankful that, my mom, drove me to church. Yeah. And I had a lot of that background.
So you had that seed.
I had the seeds planted. I was that kid that, when I was at church or when I was around my church friends, I would have told you I was a Christian, 100%. However, when I got to college and just not really having to be at church, not really, being pulled and drugged there, and being faced with the things of this life that are hard, right? I was willing to kind of punt on that. And so to kind of, in the middle of all the madness post-football for me, the rock, other than Sheena, was playing basketball at the rec center at EKU.
Okay.
And so I played every day. Every day that I was on campus, I played.
Yeah.
I would skip class. I would be there for 4 hours. I would be there till 10 o'clock.
Wow.
I would skip dinner and go get food and then go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
So I played every single day. And, at the time I was definitely starting to realize that, I was not ever going to play football again.
Mm-hmm.
That, that part of my life was over. And so I didn't have any want to like play basketball in like a big way, right? It was just, that was something we did together as my friend group. So I would play against this guy all the time. He was probably in a similar boat, I don't know. But I would play against this guy all the time. And we would jaw at each other, get in each other's faces. If we met on the court, there was going to be an argument nearing a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, it was just madness always. It was always, the testosterone was just flying in there.
Sure.
And so, anyway, we would get into all these little scuffles, all this stuff. So, fast forward a couple years, and I'm working at my job in retail, and I see him. He's waiting. First person waiting right now. I finished with my customer. He's waiting. I'm like, man, this would be a great time for a break.
Yeah.
So I go and take a little 15-minute break, right?
Try to do a little avoidance section.
A little avoidance action, yeah. Take my 15-minute break. Come back out. He's still there.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I gotta help him. Like, my boss is probably gonna kill me if I don't help him. She's here. Like, I can't. Like, I have to go help him.
Right.
So I go help him. This is the dude that I've been jarring with for 2 years, basically. I hadn't seen him in a while at this point, but this is wintertime 2013.
Okay.
So I start talking to him. His demeanor, his voice, everything about him is different.
Oh, wow.
The way he carries himself is so different.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was talking to a totally different person. So I am like, whatever. Like, this has to be a fluke. Like, I don't like, maybe he's growing up a little bit, but I don't believe it.
Sure.
So 2 weeks later, he comes in again, asks for me specifically. I'm like, shoot, what does he want? Like, I already helped him, right? So I talked to him again, and he invites me to a small group. And so at the time, he was going to a church that was a fairly small church plant that had just moved into a school. Okay. And so basically, he invites me to this small group with his pastor, who I actually knew his pastor through playing basketball. His pastor, Rich, played with us sometimes too. Okay. Tall guy, really talented ball player. He played in college somewhere. But anyway, so Rich was the leader, and I was like, this is pretty cool. Like, whatever. So I come to church after I come to the small group. So we go to the church. I'm like, man, I'm really liking this. Start meeting with Adam, the guy, for coffee. And so he goes to this book with me, and the church we were going to, the original church, the home church, had created this discipleship series of books, really thin little books, and you could go with them from somebody that's 7 years old to 70, and they were really, really powerful and good books. But so we started going through this book, and I know all the answers. I know all the church answers, right? Yeah. But I didn't know them in my heart. I wasn't living that way. I wasn't operating in a manner that would make my life seem as though that was true for me. So I started feeling a lot of conviction. And at this time, I'd already been married for 2-ish years or so. And one day we meet for coffee, and I don't have like an exact time that this happened that I became a Christian, but we met for coffee, and I was like, I know that I have not been a Christian. Right. I know that my life is now different. Yeah. Went home. Sheena got home for lunch, I think, from work that day. And I told her, I broke down. I told her I was sorry I failed her. I felt like I had lied to her. I felt like I had manipulated her in ways. And honestly, I didn't even know. Yeah. And so that day,
because it feels normal when you're doing this stuff, because that's your everyday life. Correct. Prior to actually not just having conviction, but following conviction.
Right. So I told her, I was like, I'm so sorry. I thought I was a Christian my whole life. Yeah. And I know I am now. And that moment of clarity that God gave us was just beautiful. And I remember her, consoling me and telling me that she was so happy, and that were able to go through this together was really cool. And so yeah, that was kind of the beginning of my time with the Lord.
Yeah.
And we, throughout moving, we went to several different churches, experienced a lot of different things, and I was so thankful for that foundation though of that church, because it was so centered around evangelism and being honest about where you stood.
Right.
That real foundation of faith for me, along with the seeds that were planted along the way, definitely are a big part of why I am, who I am today.
Sure.
And the way the Lord's molded me. But over the last several years, man, it's been so cool to see Him work in my family's lives, and the lives of the churches that I've been able to go to. But specifically, the last 2 years at Ashland has been just the Lord really orchestrated some fantastic things there. So I'm grateful.
No, absolutely, man. I love that story. And really, like, what we don't know is oftentimes it only takes one of those early seeds to sprout before we can say, like, man, God really did plant that, in my life. And when we allow Him to work, when we invite Him in to say, like, we give Him our yes, right? Yes, send me, right? That's when He can really, like, make a difference. And so I think that oftentimes, especially I was the same way, man. Before I really started living for Christ, right? Paul says in the New Testament that he was an ambassador for Christ. And so I don't even really it's so bad, right? But the term Christian has such a negative connotation in some circles, especially for people that don't go to church, that don't know Jesus, right? Because, y'all are just hypocrites. I see you doing that when you tell me not to do that, or I see you go to church Sunday, but then, Friday night I saw you at the bar, right? So it's really interesting to me to think of it in a way of being an ambassador, right? Because when you're an ambassador, you want to rep something, you do it with all your heart. And you follow the guidelines not for religious sake, but for freedom's sake, right? So I love that transition and that story from, what was planted in you early, God was going to make sure that it came to fruition. His word does not return back to Him void, right? So shout out to your parents, to your mom. Sure. That's awesome. I do want to talk a little bit going into this season with and you didn't mention the name, so I won't either. You can if you want. Your company that you were promoted through. So when you're in that season and you're promoted and promoted and promoted, that doesn't just happen, right? That happens because you excel at what you do and people notice. In the corporate world, that's how you make headway, right? So can you kind of discuss with us now more so about how your relationship with Jesus shaped you during those years of success, of promotion, of family, and how that worked out for you?
Yeah, it's funny as I think about that, and while you're asking me that question, it's honestly really cloudy. Like that's the word that I would use to describe that time for me. And the reason being was because I was very faithful to my family, to my church. Or the churches that I went to at that time. The Lord was really working in me in a lot of ways. I had so many great gospel conversations. I had an employee write me a card telling me that they had never encountered anyone that showed them what the love of Jesus looked like. Like I did. And I failed. Yeah. I'll be honest, I felt like I sucked at that. And this person was somebody that had was a transgender, like had already transitioned.
Wow.
And they grew up in church and they told me that. And I was like, this is crazy. I don't understand like how the Lord is using me in these situations. I'm so stressed out. Yeah. And I'm struggling, but like what happened was like you said, it wasn't by accident. I was doing a really good job. I was very vocal about how good I was doing. I was great at playing the corporate game. To be honest with you, I was great at corporate America. In the sense that I knew the right people to stay in good cahoots with. I knew the right people to stay away from. And so I was good at that game. I saw it as a game, and I wanted to win.
Right.
And so anyway, the way the Lord, used the people around me to keep me grounded, and he gave me great mentors in that time. Every place I went, all the places I went to, I had somebody that was pouring into me. Mm-hmm. And I think about how faithful the Lord was in that time. Yeah. And how often I was so selfish and prideful. Mm-hmm. And even though I knew I was a Christian, I know for a fact at that time I was a Christian. Yeah. I struggled with putting him first. Right. I struggled with taking work off the throne. Yep. And putting him on. Yeah. And so for me, it was one of those things that as I kept seeing and kept encountering these situations, my natural sinful inclination was to run. Mm-hmm. So what's funny is each time I got promoted, and I can look back and tell you this for 100% fact, I was running from a potential harder situation. Wow. If that makes sense. Yep. So the first store that I got promoted to as a store manager, things were going great. Fantastically great. Mm-hmm. I was really well recognized. I was killing it, to be honest with you. Sure. But I saw on the horizon that things were going to get really hard with things that were changing within the company. And so the perfect timing, so in a way I think the Lord kept me in this way, is that he allowed me the opportunity to move to Louisville. Mm-hmm. And so that store was the reverse. I came into like possibly one of the worst situations I came into. Yeah. And I did okay. Like my store was okay, but I saw good things coming. And so I stayed and prepared and helped and did all these things. Yeah. And then things were about to get hard again, real hard. Yeah. And so I started pressing, like full court press for the next role. And again, thankfully, I had made the right connection. I had impressed the right person. Yeah. I had stayed on their good side, and I got promoted again to the job that I thought was going to be the one. Yeah. And so I worked through a lot of situations that were really hard, including the pandemic starting like almost right away when I moved there to Indianapolis. And man, things just got really, really, really hard, and to a point where I couldn't run anymore. Yeah. And the Lord was pressing into me. Like, you can't run from this to the next job. Yeah. Like, the thing you need to do is run to me. Come on, bro. Like, stop running from job to job and run to me. Yeah. Trust me, I got you. Like, these are the things that he was telling me as I was crying in my bed for 2 hours after I just had a panic attack for the first time in my life. Yeah. After my wife is consoling me, telling me it's all going to be okay, like, I hear him telling me, run and come to me. Yeah. Stop running to the next thing. All those who are weary and heavy laden. Run to me. Yeah. And I will give you rest. Yeah. And I didn't understand that I needed rest. Right. And I was working all day long, 2 phones, a laptop, an iPad. I had it all with me all the time. I never stopped. And the Lord was telling me, stop. Yeah. Run to me, rest. Yeah. And he really laid it on our hearts to move back to Kentucky. We hadn't, we loved our church family in Indy, but we had nothing really tying us there. And we were just like, man, let's go. Yeah. No plans. Let's sell our house and move. And we did. And the Lord brought us here. So it's been so cool to see the Lord's faithfulness. Now, in retrospect, I can see it a lot clearer. Sure. Hindsight's 20/20. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so now I can see it so much clearer. But the Lord kept us through all that and provided through every single situation. Right. And the hardest times, he was right there providing for us. His provision might not have looked how I wanted it to look like, but he was providing the whole time. Right. And he was setting us up for what is now and what is in the future. Yeah. He was setting that up all throughout then. He was even, giving me little glimpses of things like, hey, here's how you run a business. Here's how you don't run a business. Not even necessarily with the company I was working for, 100%. With the people I encountered and the other minds I was able to, brains I was able to pick. Like, I see now how he was setting all that up for now. Yeah. And how he's using it to bring glory to himself. For sure. 100%. So I often think about, like, this is something I struggled with, and, dude, we can so relate to one another, was, like, I would, especially early on in my real estate career, or even before real estate, when I knew that I was supposed to be a business owner. Like, I walked around when I was 5 years old, back when you could do this. You can't do this anymore. Don't send your kids out into the streets.
But like, bro, I drew like pictures, and there was an ice cream shop like up the road, Micanopy, Florida.
Hey.
And the mint chocolate chip was so choice, man. It was so good.
So good right now.
Dude, it was fire. And I don't even eat mint chocolate chip anymore because every time I've had it after that, it was trash. And I was super young, right, to remember that. But I literally drew pictures, and one I can remember specifically was Jack and the Beanstalk. Okay. So I'm walking around and I'm trying to like sell people these photos, or not photos, but literal crayon drawn pictures that I can go buy some ice cream. And so, man, God put that in my heart from, 5-6 years old, and ended up, that's the only one I ever sold. Pretty sure I sold it to the lady for $5 and went and got some mint chocolate chip on a sugar cone, man. And what I've come to understand over the years is that, my ambition is not misplaced. My heart was. My desire for success is not misplaced. My heart was towards success. Bro. So, and I feel like the Holy Spirit told me that, like, no, like the desires are the same, but you're going to do them for me and not for yourself, right? And Romans 8:28 tells us that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Yeah. So I think that when you finally, like, your ambition wasn't misplaced, your drive wasn't misplaced, your desire to cultivate relationships wasn't misplaced, but the heart was, right? It was for me. It was so I could be vocal about how good of a job I did, right? So I could go to the next place and not have to deal with the hard stuff. Bro, that's like my whole life. And the season that I've been in for the last couple of years, I'm the opposite, to where God has been telling me, there's nowhere else you can go except for me. Like, you can't go anywhere. And I'm going to hold you here, and I'm going to press you here until you finally realize that I'm Jehovah Jireh. I'm all you need. And I feel like I think that's another, we still have a long way to go in developing our relationship. But meeting you at Ashland for the very first time, and you listened to Kelsey and I's show about how we kind of stumbled upon Ashland, which we didn't really stumble upon it. Kelsey was raised in that church. Right.
It was there the whole time.
It was there the whole time. If it was a snake, it would have bit us.
Right.
But, show my age a little bit right there. But no, I mean, honestly, the first time I met you, I was like, and even Kelsey said, because that's right, I met you I saw you at church, but then I really started talking to you at the kids' gym. And so, Kelsey walked up to me when we were leaving, and she was like, "You guys are going to be best friends." And I'm
we ended up meeting like 2 days later.
Yeah, we ended up meeting. Yeah. And so I knew, bro, that I knew and I know that you're a light to the people that you're around. It's definitely no surprise to me that your business is successful, because that drive is still there. But like you said, you put the Lord first in what you're doing. And we've talked about having that nature of discipline is not in our nature, right? God gives us a mind of power and of love and of self-discipline. Self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit, right? Like all these different things that we could not do by ourselves. But as long as we continue to abide in him, he abides in us, right? So now I want you to unhumbly, I don't think that's a real word, but don't be humble, all right? And I want you to, you've bragged on the Lord, and he knows that, he sees you. Now I want you to talk about your business. So you transitioned from, corporate America, and now you're starting your own business. You saw what you would want to do with that and what you wouldn't want to do with that, how you would treat people, how you wouldn't treat people. And can you specifically, thank you, Holy Spirit, give me a time where you put the Lord first in your new business, and maybe you didn't charge somebody or whatever, and that was paid back to you tenfold?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's one of those things that as I think about the last year and some change, I I had no idea what I was doing. I tell people all the time, I still mostly don't know what I'm doing.
That's not true. Your work is fire, bro.
I went to YouTube University.
Yep.
I learned everything I possibly could. I failed a lot. And I think for me, I don't know that there was an exact turning point per se, but I want to tell the story, and I think that it's really impactful and important, and shows you. And again, I know that you told me to brag a little bit, but I'm going to brag on the Lord again in this way.
Yep.
But He's so faithful, and He's so funny too. So back in February
of this year,
2023, I had mainly been doing sports videography, which I love sports. It was easy. It was a great way for me to learn how to use my camera. It was a great way for me to edit, and I loved the hype music. It was a fun way to get into it.
Listen, we got to get you into OC, bro, because there's a lot of North stuff on your page, and we're going to have a conversation about that.
Oldham, South Oldham, I'll just know where to find me.
That's right.
I ask all the time.
That's right.
Just saying.
Call them.
Anyway, so I'd mainly been doing sports. I'd done a few things for some businesses. I'd been working pretty heavily for the church already at this point, doing stuff for social media. And I was like, man, how can I attract more clients that are different from, what I'm doing right now? And so I had watched this thing that was talking about how on Instagram, when you have your name on the top, right? So like you has your like @ name, right? So it'd be like @ChrisDye. But where you put your name, your profile name, that is searchable. And so it said this thing like, hey, like if you're in this business, right? So like let's say you are a realtor in Louisville. Like obviously there's a bazillion of them, but like if you put Chris Dye, Louisville Realtor, when somebody searches Instagram or even Google and they search Louisville Realtor, like you are more likely to be found that way versus having it in your bio.
Sure. Okay.
So your bio is important,
Yeah.
but that little name part is really important.
Got you.
And so I changed my name part to say like, Dave, One Stop Media, and I put Louisville videographer and photographer. It's like mid-February. So one day I'm sitting in my cubicle and I get this DM. And to be honest with you, I didn't get many DMs at the time. So I was like, oh, what is this? Like I thought it was fake, to be honest with you. And it's this guy named Albert. And he's like, hey man, I'm in a real pinch and could use your help with doing some video work tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow?
Right.
Like Thursday, March 1st, whatever, the date was. I think it was March 1st. And he was like, I know this probably seems weird, but we're legit. You can look this up. Here's my number. Call me. So I call him. I walk out of my little cubicle area and go call him in the hallway. And so he's like telling me everything, and instantly I felt like this like wave of the Lord, just like trust him, trust this person. He's not going to steer you wrong in this way, and I'm not going to steer you wrong as the Lord is telling me. And so anyway, I'm like, sure, I'll do it. So I take the day off work.
Yeah.
And I go and film this lady named Renee Funk, who's a fantastic realtor from Orlando. And she's speaking at this conference, Real Estate Distilled, here in Louisville. At the Moatwood Arts Center.
Shout out to Scott Hack.
Yeah, shout out to Scott and Liz Hack. Love y'all. And so anyway, I do this. And to be honest with you, I don't really think it was that good from a filming perspective. Like, I didn't have all the newer equipment that I have now. I didn't have all the lighting and all those things, but I had enough. And I think it was well enough. And I kept that relationship, and I also met Scott and Liz. And so to just kind of plant this right here is that I do this conference March 1st. Film it. Meet Scott and Liz, keep that relationship, keep the relationship with Albert and the company, Blended Sense. And so a couple months later, I end up meeting back up with Scott and Liz, hang out with them. They invite me to a networking group they have. And so I meet somebody from that networking group, and I end up getting involved in another one. And throughout this time, I'm still contacting with Blended Sense. I end up doing some editing for them as well. And I kept a great relationship with them. And that one change to my Instagram account, that one phone call with Albert, that right there has led to probably me starting this business 2 months ago full time. It has provided at least 10 to 15 clients. Wow. And some of the most pivotal business relationships that I have.
That's awesome.
Came from that by chance phone call that I took. And by the Lord's grace, that I took that gig and did it.
Yeah.
And so although it wasn't necessarily free, because I didn't get paid for it, the relationships and the way that the Lord has used that one event, that one moment to really be the catalyst for my business, has been incredible. And I have seen through that, and I've had moments of that where I've said, man, I could really charge this person more, but I see so much that they need this. Like, I could be the spark in that. And that has come from, landing me 4 other jobs or landing me a contract with them. And I've been so thankful to have so many moments like that. Yeah. And it's purely the Holy Spirit, giving me wisdom and reminding me of my experiences and the relationships that I built to say, hey, look, yes, charge what you're worth, but know when to say yes to certain things and also know when to say no. Right. And I've had to learn that too. And so for me, it's crazy. The Lord has done an amazing work through this business and allowed me the opportunity to meet with people and to, grow my skills and show my skills and be able to put myself in positions that, are successful and allow me to do this full time, which is crazy. I would have never imagined that a year after, having an idea that it would be my thing full time. If you would have told me in October 2022 that this is what I was going to do this year, at the end of this year, I would have told you were crazy. Especially if you would have told my wife. Right. She was like, hey, you're doing a really good job. Maybe we can talk about this in a couple years. Yeah. And that is no shade to her. That is what I need from her because I'm a dreamer. Right. Like, I was ready, like, January 1, like, let's do this. Yeah. I didn't even have any clients, And so for me, it's been really, really cool, man. Really cool.
That's amazing, dude. I love that story. And it's, what's funny is it's not the time continuum that God works in is not ours. Like his ways are higher than our ways. Yep. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And so from what I see from you telling me that story, seeing these things in pictures is, it wasn't that one phone call. It was the thing that happened 1, 2, 3 years prior where you said, I'll trust you right here. Transition. I'll trust you right here. I know this isn't, panic attack. I need to do something else. God, help me figure out what that looks like. Quit on a whim. You don't do that unless you genuinely trust God.
And also you have a little bit of stupidity mixed in there. I will say that there was probably a little bit.
I understand.
Just a dash. I think the Lord was like, hey, you're going to look real dumb for about a couple months. Sure. And that's okay.
And that's humility. That's humility, bro. And there's this quote by Bill Johnson that I love because if you're in the Christianity world, you understand the term supernatural peace, right? And supernatural understanding. And so Bill Johnson says you cannot have supernatural peace until you give up the right to understand. Like we feel like we have this right to always understand what we're going through. And that's just not the case. So through your yeses, through your trust, that one message to where God was like, you've been faithful. You've been obedient to what I've called you to do. And now watch, right? What he can do with it. So, dude, I love that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I know you've already told me this, but just kind of chatting around, what is your favorite type of video or content to shoot?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love having my camera out, man. I love seeing people's reactions. Some people love it. Some people are like, oh, get that away from me.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing, and this kind of goes back to being a community storyteller, I just love helping businesses reach the audience they're trying to reach. Yeah. And I love helping them transition their vision from paper or their brain to the screen. Yeah. And, I think it's so cool. And we've talked about this before too, is that, if this would have happened a couple of years ago, I would not have been prepared. I would have fumbled the bag for sure. Yeah. And it's cool because now I can see their responses and I can glean on their feedback. Yeah. And I feel pride in my work, don't get me wrong, but I feel so much more pride in the way the Lord has used me to work with them.
Yeah.
And I feel so much pride in being able to not only provide them that video, but to provide them somebody that supports them. Maybe not necessarily financially. I may not go and buy at every business that I talk to, but like to be that guy on their social media that gives them a like, or shares their stuff, or throws up an emoji on their latest post. Like, people don't understand how far that goes.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, if you never ever recommend a client to me, if you never ever want to work with me, that's fine.
Yeah.
The biggest thing you can help me do in my business is to interact with my stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't ask for much with that.
Right.
People don't understand how far a like or a share or a comment can go, or a subscription, a follow, whatever it might be. Like, that stuff is important.
Yeah.
And although it may not seem like much, it does matter.
Yeah.
And so for me, I try to be that for other people. I try to be that person that celebrates all your wins, because we can all win.
Yeah.
We can, even with other videographers and photographers. I'm the first person to go and like their stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not because I want to be, it's because I want to support them.
100%, yeah.
And so for me, my favorite thing, to answer your question, my favorite thing is not just being the person that helps them tell their story. It's the person that helps them to continue to tell their story.
I like that.
It's the person that continues to be there to love on them and support them, and not just celebrate their wins in business, but to celebrate their family wins, the birth of their child, the whatever it might be. Like,
dog, I'm here for it, whatever it is.
Be that person that loves on you well, because that's what the Lord has called me to be. He's called me to encourage other people, and He's called me to use my platform to do that well. And so not only do I do that on the front end from the second I consult with you or meet you, but I'm going to do that for years to come on the back end, whether we ever work together again or we ever work together in the first place. I'm going to support you by way of social media, by way of sending you a text or a call, or meeting you up for coffee to congratulate you, or whatever it might be. Like, I want to support you in that way. And so that's my favorite thing to do, is that whole start to not even finish, but that whole starting point of building a relationship and seeing it through, and seeing you and helping you communicate your vision and celebrating it in the end as well.
Yeah, that's too good to follow up, man. That is so good. I love that. And I think that is true in our world as well. I don't really care what brokerage you're in, right? Because if you were to call me and say, if you were at XYZ Realty and you say, hey, Chris, I'm kind of struggling, can you give me some ideas? The person that cares what brokerage you're in, or the person that cares, what video company you work for, doesn't help that person, right? But when you care about people first and making an impact on people, that's when you can put that difference aside and just say, yeah, absolutely, I'm here for you, building that relationship. And not even necessarily like you said, and I wholeheartedly agree, there's not a finish line on a relationship.
Yeah.
Now there's boundaries for other things, and we can talk about that at a different show, right? But in terms of relationships, no. Like, we're called to love each other, and if we truly understand that we're actually united in the body, and we are supposed to work together and be with one another as He is in us, right? So, man, this is so good. I love that. Any kind of, I feel like this is a good time to wrap things up, if you do as well. And so I would love to get any kind of just parting words for maybe the person who has a vision and wants to start, or that person who may be struggling in their vision. Maybe they're already in it, but they're not sure if it's what they're supposed to be doing. What advice would you give to those people?
Oh man, that's a lot of depth. So I think, for one, if you have the vision to do something, you have to start.
It's your responsibility.
It's your responsibility to start.
Yeah.
But remember that your starting line might be way far away from the finish line.
Yeah.
And you cannot expect yourself to be halfway through the race when you start.
Right.
And so, for me, for instance, in the video world, is like right away I'm like, man, what's the best camera out there? What's the best lighting?
Yep.
What's the best this? And, pridefully and selfishly, I wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not saying, to go and get like the cheapest thing ever too,
Sure.
but I am saying is that like, you need to find what's most important.
Yep.
There's so many, I could sit out here and be the billionth person to tell you what the best things to buy on a budget are. Because there's so many out there for whatever niche you're in, whatever business you want to start. But I will tell you to start. And if you're a Christian especially, I would be praying about what that looks like for your family.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for the future? Is this sustainable?
Yeah.
Is what you want? Do you see the ending of what you want being something that is good for your family and good for yourself, right? Because if you, want to do something that's going to take up 95 hours a week, like, that may not be a good idea.
Right.
And so, for me, it's like, okay, that's the first step, starting. The second step is finding and making the discipline happen to do the things you need to do to get to where you want to be. And so for me, it was waking up early.
Yeah.
So whenever I decided to start this business, it didn't obviously happen right away in terms of like the workload. But for 8-ish months, I was working from 4:30 a.m. till 7 a.m. Going to work in my cubicle or in my desk from 7 to 4, spending the evening with my family and working another hour or so sometimes, maybe 2. Sometimes even working during the day while I was working on a break or at lunch. And so for me, like, that took a lot of discipline because I wasn't always motivated to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And if you have the discipline to do it, when the motivation falters, the discipline will remain and
Let's go. Yeah.
Right? And so that would be the one thing. So when you go back to step 1, are you willing to put in the work, willing to be disciplined for a season to do what you need to do to get there, right? And that goes for anything.
Yeah.
I'm not an example of this, but if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to get stronger, like, that requires discipline because you're not always going to feel January 1 motivation on June 1.
Right.
You might not feel it on January 15th.
Right.
If you're me.
Don't take too long.
So like, you have to find discipline and you have to make yourself do hard things.
Right.
And 3 is you have to eliminate some of that pride, a lot of that pride, to be able to say, like, I may not be good at this right away. So, again, I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, in my world, it's like, my first videos were terrible. They were awful, right? But, I was so thankful that through YouTube University, shout out, big shout out to my guy, Sean Cannell from Think Media. I heard him say this, and it has resonated with me. I probably heard him say this back in November of last year, so it's been over a year at this point. He said, may your worst videos be your first videos. And I also heard him say, this is the smallest audience you'll ever have right now.
Wow.
Right? So don't worry about what you're putting out there right now. Don't make it bad.
Yeah.
Do your best, but you're gonna get better.
Right. As long as you continue to believe.
You continue to put in the work, to believe that you can do it, and to have faith that this is the right course. Like, you can do that. Yeah. And so for me, like, eliminating the pride out of wanting it to be perfect right away.
Right.
So those would be like the 3 things I would say to somebody that's trying to start. Yep. To the person that's in the middle of it, I don't know that I have a great answer for that, to be honest with you. Sure. I would obviously tell somebody, hey, like, is this the right thing that you feel like you're supposed to be doing? Are you in the right niche? Yeah. Right? Like, for me, like, I love doing a lot of different things. I kind of enjoy that aspect.
Me too.
However, I know people that they will only do one thing. Yep. I know videographers that will only do weddings. I know photographers that will only shoot for brands. That's what they like doing, and that's cool. Right. Sometimes you have to do other stuff to make ends meet. I understand that. I personally am not like that. But I would say, like, is what you're doing what you're passionate about? Yeah. If you're a videographer, if you're a photographer, and you're having to, run the gamut of things, like I like to do, but you don't like to do that, what is it that you do like to do? And put everything in that basket, right? Yeah. Put all your eggs in that basket. Yeah. If you love weddings, well, go to weddings. Yeah. Find people that will let you be a second shooter. Find, somebody that will let you edit. Like, whatever it is that you need to start building your portfolio, do it. Right. If you're a realtor and you, like, love commercial real estate, and you find yourself only doing, these what's the opposite of commercial? Just
residential.
Yeah. So like if you're a commercial real estate agent and you find yourself only doing residential deals, I don't really like this. I want to do commercial stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, go find commercial clients.
Yeah.
Like put yourself out there.
Right.
To do the thing that you feel like you need to do in your space.
That's a word, bro.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, I know nothing about real estate, but I'm just saying it's like, if that's something you're interested in, like go do it.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to fail. Set yourself up parameters that will also not allow you to fail too much.
Yeah.
But like put yourself in a position to succeed in what you want to succeed in.
Yeah.
Right? And whatever lane that is, like you're gonna have to put effort and work towards it.
For sure.
It might look hard for a year.
Yeah.
But like after the year, if you can look back and say like, man, I really worked towards what I wanted to work towards. Now I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing that right now.
Yeah.
And so for me, I thought I was going to work in corporate America forever, for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to work for that same company. I thought I was going to retire there.
Yeah.
But the Lord had so many better plans for me.
Mm.
And he had so much goodness for me waiting when I submitted to him.
Yeah.
And I stopped focusing on the things that I thought I was supposed to do.
Right.
Right. So if you're today, you think you're supposed to do this certain thing, and you drag your feet in it every day, and you hate it, and you wake up feeling like this is terrible.
Yep.
Like maybe you need to change.
Right.
Or maybe like in what you're talking about, maybe you need to sit there and you need to have some hard realizations about yourself in that season.
Yes.
So maybe God doesn't need to change your circumstances; He needs to change you in your circumstances. Right. Woo! And so for me, it's like, I think I've seen both sides of that. Mm-hmm. I've seen God change my circumstances, and I've seen God change me in them.
Yep.
And prepare me for the change of the circumstances,
yeah.
right? So, that's a ton of advice in that little amount.
Put it in half speed, baby, and run that thing back, because, that was so good.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, for sure, bro. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, man. You've blessed me by being here. I know that it's going to be a blessing to our audience. And you're 100% right, man. Like, not until did I finally get a swift kick in the rear at the end of last year did I say, I'm doing this podcast. Mm. And it had been on my mental for 2 years. And, my buddy, Justin, shout out, in Michigan, he was like, he started his the year prior, and he said, you need to do this. And I'm like, all right. I sent Will this text last night looking at our stats for the show, and I haven't looked in a long time. Every now and then, I just like to check and see. And, this 1 year, 33 episodes in, over 1,600 downloads, international, we've been opening up international audience, not just in Malawi and Africa, which is where Nathan and Justy come from, and I know that they support the show as well. But, dude, just like all over Zimbabwe, and just like all over the place that I would have never suspected. And I've had people reach out via email or write a review and things like that on the show. And so shout out to everybody that engages. And I think that's the other piece too, is when you've started something, like I said, that seed had already been planted, right? So it's in you. And it's in you for a reason. Like there's purpose there, right? And so don't give up. If there's something that you feel like has been placed inside of you, you can tell the difference between like, I'm going to go try this and it not working and being like, okay, maybe that's not for me. But if you can genuinely see yourself and have vision, without vision, the people perish. If you can see that vision coming to pass, you won't quit. And so I ditto everything you said, but then also say, just hang in there and allow God to work in you if you're in that middle space where, you're just not quite sure how it's going to turn out on the other side.
Right.
Just keep having faith. Awesome, bro. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have to have you back for sure. And, I'm excited to see where you graciously sent an invitation to us to do some work for the nonprofit.
Yep.
And so I'm very, very excited to have you do that.
Stay tuned.
With my mom and I. Yeah, we're going to pump that out. It's going to be good. beginning of the year. So everybody that listens to the show has heard me talk about Her Hope Kentucky and what we do. And there it is. Thank you, Holy Spirit. I'll have my mom on at the beginning of 2024 to talk about everything that we did in 2023, but everything that's happening also.
I'm excited to hear that.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. So awesome, man. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, I want to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Community Land Title. CLT is a full-service land title and escrow settlement provider here to protect your real estate investments. When you work with their knowledgeable team, you'll be guided through the process in a transparent and timely way. Matthew, Colleen, got to see you again the other day. I miss seeing you guys. Love everybody at CLT, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. And just like I do with every episode, I'll leave you with this. You have a gift. It's time to grow in it.